Where's that little sweetheart? Come here! Let him he wants to give you a kiss.
Wouldn't it be cool to be Buzz Lightyear? Now you can be Buzz in the new Toy Story 2 video game. Use lasers and whirling torso spins to save the day. Jump, swing and somersault through the air with a special rocket jet and moonspring boots.
There you are!
In the new Toy Story 2 video game, you are Buzz Lightyear. Life is good.
As usual on Remember 64, it is time to chat about the game itself. Yes, we are talking Toy Story this time. We have a special guest with us. Before I say hello to our special guest, Jiggy, how are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm holding up. It's been a busy evening for yourself as of this recording right now. You kind of rushed home to be a part of this, so it's really fun that we're gonna have like 3 of us now. So that was unexpected, and the cat's coming to join as well.
And
hello.
my cat, if you didn't hear in your little intro there, started
No, actually,
meowing. I'm like, right on cue, she runs in and meow.
perfect.
Like, of
Just
course.
wants to be a part of it. It's all good. But
She just really loves Toy Story.
really loves. So do I. I love Toy Story. I love Pixar. We'll get into it. Don't worry. Okay, so we have Josh from the Still Loading podcast here with us this time. We're going to be doing a couple of episodes together, so you will be hearing that on our feed and his. But Josh, Still Loading podcast has been going on for hundreds of episodes at this point. Welcome to Remember 64.
Thank you for having me, man. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. I'm a fan of your show. I've been listening to the episodes from I've been trying to catch up and listening from the beginning and trying to catch up again. But N64, man, it's my first console. It will always have a place in my heart. So when I saw there's an entire podcast dedicated to my favorite, I should say my favorite, but my first console, my first love, I had to pester you in order to get onto the show. So thank you so much for not being bothered by my pestering and allowing me to come on.
Oh, not at all. Are you kidding me? Anytime we can have an awesome guest on is always welcome. We've had so many so far. Jiggy was that. Now he's on it more regularly. And then recurring guests is exactly what we need. Co-host chair, not co-host chair. It doesn't matter. It's all good. It's an open door. So actually, you sort of, I stepped all over the segue there, but I just thought I would ask at first, as we do with anybody that's new on the show, your history with the 64. You kind of touched on it. Let's start there.
Oh yes. So for those, if any of my listeners are listening to this, they've heard this story a bunch of times. But for all you Remember 64 listeners, buckle up your sit downs. It's not that exciting of a story, but I'm going to share it anyway.
Woo!
No. So, when I was a kid, I didn't have any video games until about 10. I was 10 years old. I would play games at other friends' houses, church friends, and neighbors, and all that good stuff. And I remember my neighbor had a Sega Genesis, and I loved the Sega. I loved that thing so much. I loved, of course, Sonic and Tiny Toon Adventures, Buster's Hidden Treasure. Jiggy knows what I'm talking about.
Yes, we all do, apparently.
Dude,
yes.
Okay, literally, this is okay. Keep going.
That was my favorite game of all time for a long time before I even owned any video games. So I remember going up to my parents. I'm like, hey, I really like, so could I get some video games? Could I get a Sega Genesis one day? And so my parents are like, well, think about it. And that usually was code for, honestly, I have no idea. It could have been yes or no. It could have been like never, and we're just going to tell them we'll think about it. Or it could have really meant they were thinking about it. It was a mystery. You never knew. And one year for Christmas, I think it was 1999, if I remember correctly.
What a great year.
It was a very good year. And I got an N64 for Christmas along with Donkey Kong 64. And I remember I was pissed. I'm like, this isn't a Sega Genesis. I was so mad, man. I was like, I asked for a Sega and you got me this. And to some people that may be I may have gotten the lesser of the deal, but I disagree. I ended up falling in love with my N64. It took a little bit. I remember the next day we actually went to Blockbuster to rent Pokemon Snap because that was
nice.
Like I knew Pokemon. I didn't give two shits about Donkey Kong 64. I was confused by it at first. Now it's one of my favorite games, flaws and all. But at the time, couldn't stand it. I was like, I don't understand this. What is this Donkey Kong? Like, I was very young in my gaming journey. I had no concept of a lot of the different characters and all that other. Though I'm fairly certain I knew Donkey Kong prior to that. In any case, got Pokemon Snap from Blockbuster and rented it. Never did the sticker thing that you could take pictures and bring it back to Blockbuster and print out your pictures. Never did that, even though our Blockbuster had that. Kind of regret it too. In any case, played Pokemon Snap, really enjoyed that, and then I kind of started figuring out Donkey Kong 64 and being just amazed by the worlds and like just this big 3D playground that I could play in. I'm like, this is amazing. Why did I not like this at first? And then the rest was history. I got Toy Story 2 specifically in regards to this game. I don't remember when, but my parents got it for me. And this is one of those games where like I ended up really enjoying it. I was a little confused by it at first because 3D controls, especially early 3D controls, are a little rough around the edges. I actually think comparatively, this is not the worst that I've played. In retrospect,
100%.
it's no Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie in terms of controls and feel for the N64, but comparatively to other 3D platformers on the system, controls aren't too bad from frame rate issues, but overall the controls aren't too bad. And I remember this game, I would play it, and we didn't have a rumble pack, so we couldn't save unless it had a battery backup. We could not save any of our games. And I remember getting really far into the game and we had to go to church, and I'm like, crap. Back when I didn't swear. Crap. Gosh dang it. Mom.
Oh darn.
Oh darn.
Oh
Gee
shucks.
Willikers, Mama. Can I stay?
Jeez freaking criminy.
Jiminy Jillikers.
Gee Willikers, Mom. But no, so I'm like, well, can I just leave my system on, Mom? And my mom was like, sure. So I left it on for like a 3-hour, like, because I grew up pretty religious, and so we went to church service was like an hour long, and my mom is a talker. I guess that's why I became a podcaster. I get it from her. And we were there for like 3 hours, it seemed like. And he came back on, and my 64 felt red hot, but it was still going. I'm like, I'm alive. And then I think I actually ended up beating it that day.
Wow.
For the first time. So I've really enjoyed this game. And so when we were trying to figure out a topic for this, and you're like, what's some of your favorite 64 games? I'm like, I got one that I don't think many people are going to want to talk about, because who thinks of a licensed game? It's Toy Story 2, but like this one, and specifically Toy Story 2 Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue. But I love this game, and I think it's kind of this term gets thrown out a little bit too often, but I think it's a bit of a hidden gem on the N64.
Yeah, I mean, I think it must be, because there's no way I played this game, despite being a massive Pixar fan, like massive, and to this day, like they are some of my favorite movies. Like a lot of people will have these nostalgic and choked up sort of memories for classic animated Disney movies and stuff, and I have that a little bit. I grew up with Lion King and all those types of movies around that time, but there's something about Pixar and Toy Story specifically that does that for me. So I'm surprised I never played this game. But you say there's people that may be, no one thinks of this game. It's a hidden gem. But we have someone else on the show that might beg to differ. Jiggy, you have some damn good love for this game, I think, right? Am I speaking for you?
I love this game. It's great. And it's definitely one of the I just want to say that first off, like, I love your story of your history with video games, because it sounded near identical to mine. My friend had a Sega Genesis. I went over, played Sonic. Tiny Toons I did play. I love that game. So I have never heard anyone bring that game up. Like,
low-key
that
good
game
Mario
was
3
amazing.
clone.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I played that, and Golden Axe was the other one. But like, I also wanted a Sega Genesis. Like, that's what I wanted. And my parents got me an N64 with Donkey Kong. And I do not regret it, because I love Donkey Kong. Same deal. But I was like, okay. Like, I was happy to get it, but I was like, this isn't Sonic.
Key
Man.
Willikers, ma.
But I don't know when I got Toy Story 2, just to bring it back.
Yeah.
I mean, I was definitely a kid, but I mean, I don't remember. But I remember really enjoying it and being surprised because I did have the Game Boy game. So that was actually Toy Story 2 on Game Boy was the first game I got for my Game Boy.
Oh, wow.
And that side scrolling, I remember it vividly, and it's the only Game Boy game that got melted in the sun because I left it in the car, and that's when I learned a valuable lesson about plastic as a child.
Oh.
That if you leave it in a hot sun, it will melt. And so
Ouch.
I do have it to this day, and it still works. It's just like the top.
Oh, really?
Is like
Oh, I thought maybe you meant like it
over.
like literally just like melted into goo or something like that.
Dude, the Game Boy
Only
survived
the top of
Operation
it.
Desert Storm. Like, you think it's gonna die from the sun? Hell no, it survived bombs. That thing's
Right.
indestructible.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember reading a thing, and like I don't know if it was a Nintendo Power or a Game Informer. It was some magazine. I remember reading that they found a Game Boy that somebody had like lost, and it was outside, and it had been like in the weather. It had been run over by like a lawnmower and like all these things, and it was like destroyed, but it still worked. Like
Yeah,
they
it
could put
did.
batteries in, and they could turn it on, and they could play it. And they're like, it's
System is
incredible.
nuts, man.
Yeah.
It's like
But-
it's like the proto Nokia phone from like the mid 2000s. You know,
They're
the
unstoppable.
chocolate bar.
Unstoppable.
You just
unstoppable.
Yeah.
build a wall with that thing, and it'd be able. You could probably use that as support beams for your house.
Definitely. It's probably a stronger foundation than what they use now.
Yeah,
be
probably.
honest.
Yeah. So you guys played this growing up, and I didn't. I actually posted, tweeted, I don't know what the heck the messages in social media are anymore, that I was playing the Game Boy version of Toy Story 2 as well, because I finished the 64 one, and I had a little bit of time to kill. I'm like, I have a version of this on my little Ambernick emulation device. I'm gonna give it a shot. I didn't really enjoy it, but
No, it's not that great.
it's not good.
that great.
It's so also very confusing, which it really shouldn't be, because it
Yeah.
should be like
It's a side-scrolling platformer. How hard should not how hard, but how confused? Like, it shouldn't be that hard to make it not confusing, is what I'm trying to say.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. The jumping doesn't feel good for some
That's
reason.
what
When
it is.
yeah, when you bump
Yeah.
into Slinky or Rex or whatever, it takes off your health. I thought they were your friends. I don't understand. So like little things like that, I'm like, okay. I spent like an hour playing, and I got through a few levels. I was like, that's fine. But playing this 64, I'm playing Toy Story 2, was pretty fun. I overall had a really good time with it. I was surprised. I thought this was going to be one of those rough around the edges type things. A lot of the time with licensed stuff, that's what it is. That's the history of games like that. Pixar has games and has had lots, once GameCube, Xbox 360, that generation, of course, in the early 2000s, I think was just loaded with that, everything tied in. Bugs Life, there's a game for 64 we'll get to eventually, but there's a bunch of Cars games, all these things that like I have some experience with, but mostly just like watching younger cousins or friends' kids play them back in the day, or things like that. I'm like, none of this appeals to me whatsoever. And I don't know that, other than a couple screenshots, I ever really saw this game. I just assumed, honestly, that it was the same as the original Toy Story, which I think I played on, I don't know what I played it on, but it's a 2D platformer.
I remember playing it on Genesis, and fucking Woody's like you take
Yo-yo?
his like string to like
Oh, yeah, that's
hook
what it
onto
is, yeah.
things, and it's fucking impossible to like actually aim correctly. So you always just fall and lose all your progress. I love that game for nostalgic reasons, but
Yeah.
playing it again, it is borderline impossible to do.
So
Yeah.
that's how I felt playing the Game Boy version of this, where it was like, I'm sure
Yeah.
this was okay, or I'm sure it's not bad, but especially compared to this 3D version on the 64, it is not even the same. Not even close.
I think what stands out to me about the 64 one is that it's a little bit of a Mario 64 clone in the sense that there is a big open playground in each level. There's different objectives in each level. You can complete them in any order that you want, assuming that you know what to do. Though Mario 64 does offer a little bit more guidance at least on the main screen, but you can get them at any point. You don't have to collect all of them in each level to progress if you don't want to. There are some gatekeeping, like skill check moments with the bosses every 3 levels. Now in my replay for this, I didn't get to completely rebeat it. I beat the slime boss. I got up to the slime boss, which is pretty, I think a little more than halfway through the game ish, somewhere around there.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Because after that is Al's toy barn. But what I like though is that there's just so much variety in like the way, like I feel like each level is just so creative with how they lay it out. It could have done something. It's one of those examples of a licensed property that takes liberties with its source material, but does it well. Not every licensed game does that. Like you know, in the second level. So the first level is exploring Andy's house to get out of it so that way you can rescue Woody.
Yeah.
The second level is exploring Andy's neighborhood. That's not really seen in the movie at all. Like you just kind of go from point A to point B pretty quickly. There's not a whole lot of that. But the game kind of takes this logical progression of like, well, if you're Buzz trying to traverse across the neighborhood to get to Woody, wherever Woody may be at, what path would he have to take? And so that's what kind of this game is. And what I like about it is the level select screen is like this really cool, like Etch-a-Sketch, like 3D Etch-a-Sketch design.
Yes.
And as you progress to each level, it like pans to a new spot and you're following along almost in the story of Andy's neighborhood, from his house to his neighborhood to, I believe the third level is where you fight the plane, and then is the boss check, and then you have the construction yard, then you have an alleyway, then you fight the slime, and then you finally make it to Al's toy barn. And it's I just like how there's like this, what could have just been like this like cohesive level structure turns out to be really well structured and also visually really interesting. That Etch-a-Sketch thing is fucking awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
It is.
Yeah.
So I'm currently, like, this lined up so perfectly, like unintentionally, but on my YouTube channel, I'm currently I do a series called Analyzing Everything, where I like look at every aspect of a game. I'm looking at the graphics, the music, the sound effects, everything. And that I'm currently playing through Toy Story 2. So it just lined up with this podcast. And I'm just like, that Etch-a-Sketch menu is so creative.
Yeah.
It's so unique. And it's one of the best level select menus of any game I've ever seen. Because it's just so, and it's interesting because it's a license from Hasbro, right? Because there's that weird Disney, Pixar, Hasbro toys connection, and like some of the characters in the game are actual like Hasbro toys and things like that. So just that connection and the liberty to use the actual like Etch-a-Sketch, like I think it's a one-off. I think it's the only time you're ever going to see that kind of a menu, and it was so unique and just really cool.
Yeah, it's a great way, because with such a large cast of characters in Toy Story, like it's that, Bug's Life, like especially a lot of these, I mean, most Pixar movies are kind of like that, especially like Cars and things like that later on. You know, if you make a game or another TV show or something, another medium outside of the movie, you want to kind of bring these characters in any way you can. You know, Rex is used as sort of like a hint guy or whatever.
Okay, wait. We just need to say how annoying he is.
Yeah.
He's in like you're like, oh my gosh.
Doesn't stop.
The whole time.
Yeah.
If you're in his proximity, he will not shut the fuck up. It's all this screaming, Buzz, over here, Buzz.
I love him though. I love Rex.
I like Rex because he's this endearing character, but he can go die in a ditch in this game. I can't.
He doesn't shut up.
He doesn't stop. I like all the other characters do that too. It's not just him, but his voice like it like if you his voice stands out above the din of
Yes, it
you
does.
know,
It really
compared
does.
to everything else.
Yeah,
You feel it.
and like the Etch a Sketch character, isn't he just called Etch in the movie? I can't remember if they even name him offhand.
The
But
twin brother named Sketch. I'm just
might-
kidding. I have no idea.
yeah, but that's the
Yeah, I
way
don't
they
know.
chose to bring that character into the game, and I think that is, like you guys both said, is insanely creative, because he could be the hint guy. You know, you could bump into him, and it could just be text on an Etch a Sketch that says turn left, turn right, you know, go up the tree, whatever it is, right? But instead, they decided to do this really unique take of the way things look, and like it's just a menu, you know, like it's really just a way to choose point A to point B sort of idea, and like
Yeah.
that's I don't know, it's little things like that where you know a couple years into the console's life cycle, they could kind of push a little bit more, come up with other ideas, because now they've had the console in their hands for a couple of years. Now they knew that this game was coming. They knew it was going to be timed with the movie, which came out in the same year. Like, let's do something more extra with it. You know, like, yeah, sure. Rex repeats his lines over and over and over. You know, I'm sure there's like this invisible fence where, like, once you cross that line, he's just going to keep talking. You're going to
there's
hear
a
him.
trigger.
Yeah, exactly, right? But the audio stuff that annoyed me the most wasn't Rex, although you guys are correct. That is there. It was the fact that most, if not all, of what Buzz says is from the first movie. And
Oh,
because he's running around saying things like, you know, I'm Buzz Lightyear, which, yes, he is, but he's not Buzz Lightyear anymore in the second movie. He's just Buzz. He doesn't think he's a toy anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm simultaneously impressed you recognize it, and simultaneously sad that it's like, wow, that is like, and I mean this as a compliment, sincerely, sir. It is the nerdiest criticism I've heard of a game in quite some time, and I'm kind of here for it. So please continue.
No, I mean that's really what it is, and I think part of it is that they didn't want to maybe they couldn't, or they weren't allowed to get the lines, you know, while they were making the game, and that's, you know,
that's
just,
probably true. Yeah.
it's probably what it is. But I'm running around trying to save Woody, which Buzz wouldn't necessarily have done early in the story of the first one, and he's, you know, saying he's Buzz Lightyear, and he's running around, and he's basically pretending he's still like Buzz Lightyear when he's really not, you know. And the one line that stuck out to me is one of the early lines in the first movie. I think it's probably within the first half hour, before he gets knocked out the window, when he's still in Andy's room and he still thinks he's Buzz Lightyear. I don't know if it's like when you do something in particular it triggers, but I heard it like 100 times playing this game. He just says, "You're mucking me, aren't you?"
Oh yeah.
Which is a classic line, and I like the delivery, and it sounds good in the game. You know, like the sound and the voiceover and stuff in the game is pretty good, I think. But that's from the first movie. That's from when he is a different person. And it bugged the shit out of me.
I thought you were going a completely different direction with that.
Okay.
Because, so just to get back to the comment about not having a controller pack.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if you do, and you navigate to the load screen menu and you load it in, the sound effect they use, and I'm just going to recreate it for it. They took like a sound bite, and Buzz is just going, and that's it. And I'm like, what?
It's his pushing sound when he's pushing the box in the game. It's the sound that he makes. I was so startled by that when I first played it. Because, like I said, I didn't have a rumble pack as a kid. I have one now. So when I was playing it on my system and I was saving, and you hear that, I'm like, why is it doing that to me? I don't want to hear Buzz vomit every time I try to pick a different load.
Why would they choose that? Like,
why would they choose that of all things? Like, somebody was just like, this is funny. You know, that's all I can figure.
Or it's all they had, and it was like the smallest sound file that they had, and they had to add it
maybe.
in. Maybe it's something, you know, technical like that.
The N64 was limited with a lot of that type of stuff. Like the PlayStation version of this had full FMV cutscenes versus the N64 could not. They had to do like title cards and stuff like that, which is still effective, but obviously it's not as cool as like FMV cutscenes. But you were mentioning when you mentioned before about Buzz's obnoxious lines. I think something that we should bring up is Buzz's moveset, like the
Yeah.
abilities that he has.
Yeah.
He has obviously a jump and a double jump, and he has his laser, which is a really fun thing. But on top of that, you have a stomp, which is really it can be used to like help propel you, like to press buttons. If there's like a jumping, like a bouncy pad type of thing, you can do that, and it'll propel Buzz higher. There's also like a wing spin, which I found completely useless personally. I was never able to.
Really?
No, I could never get the
Interesting.
timing down. Did you find it useful, Jiggy?
Yes. Not so fully charged, totally useless. But when you just tap the down C button, which is the button you use to engage it's like a little twist motion.
Yep.
It works really well on enemies that get up close and personal, and those particular robots that are in the sky that fly at you. Not the ones that shoot lasers, but like they're like the little helicopter guys, like they're in the first level.
They like come charging at you, sort of. Yeah.
Yes. And if you just tap the down button, and I would do like a jump out of that, and that would kill him in one shot. And it was just so, I don't know. I found it really satisfying, and I didn't have an issue with the timing, but I will say that fully charged, that move is virtually useless. In fact, it might be detrimental, because if you have it fully charged, basically you do like a Tasmanian devil spin, and then after that spin, Buzz goes, whoa, and then he gets dizzy for a second, and you basically are vulnerable for like a solid not 30 seconds, that would be insane. A solid like 2 seconds.
Yeah,
That's
which is a lot, which is just too much, right?
Yeah.
Like it's I
Especially
get
on
it.
It shouldn't be a thing.
platformer.
Yeah, like it adds personality. That's fine. I get it. It's sort of supposed to be kind of funny or whatever, but
Yeah.
make it, or just do the
can-
sound effect. Just do that.
You do also get, obviously, you can charge up the laser as well, and then
Yeah.
there's a laser power up you can get, which is there's a limited quantity of it that you can only get so many shots later on, but that's really fun because that's essentially the same power as I think your fully charged up shot.
Yeah,
it's
because like
close to
one
it.
laser is really strong. Which so that's the other thing. It's like
It's
a green
rapid fire.
Yeah, it's rapid fire. So I thought that's what it was. I thought it was rapid fire, but you can still charge it up. So I was just tapping the button really fast. I was like, "Woo, this is awesome!" And it worked great. But you can charge it up, and it's even stronger when you charge it up too. And then you see the level, the meter kind of go down. I thought it was like unlimited, powerful rapid fire. That's what I thought it was, and I did that for several levels. And then by
Because
accident,
it's generous. It's very hard to run out of that.
Yeah.
It is, and they have like just going into it, they have a good variety, I think, of general power-ups.
Yeah.
Which make gameplay super interesting, because in addition to the green super laser, you have like gravity boots that lets you kind of like slowly glide. You have like a force shield, which is like Buzz's belt in the movie, I guess.
Yeah.
My personal favorite, the rocket skates,
Yes.
or whatever.
Yep.
Those are dope. And then you also get the grappling hook, and you get like discs that you can shoot, discs that kind of home in on enemies.
Oh yeah.
And those honestly I find not very helpful, because they're hard to, even though they home in on an enemy, you could shoot like 10 of them and only 3 hit. So I'm not really understanding why it was doing that.
It seems to be a power up, a specific weapon that's only used for specific enemy types and bosses. You need
Yeah.
it for the boss at the top of the construction yard.
Yeah, the jackhammer.
For the
Right,
jackhammer, yep.
right.
And then there's an enemy in the alleys and gullies level which has a shield that pops up. And so every time you shoot at it, it doesn't really do anything because he just blocks it. But if you use the disc, it'll hit the shield, bounce off, and go around and hit him from behind.
Yeah.
So
Can I tell you something funny?
it's more useful for specific enemies. But yes, what do you got?
Use the spin attack.
Oh.
Fucking game.
You don't have to use that power up. You just go at spin attack, bypasses their shield and hurts them.
Oh, see, I did the disc thing because I got out of the habit of using the spin as much. I'm kind of yeah. I was like, I think I did like the half spin thing, like you were doing, Jiggy, but I didn't use it as much because I didn't find it as whatever. It didn't work for me as much as I thought it would. So I did the disc thing on that moment specifically. Actually, that's funny.
I don't know that I mentioned the other one's a grappling hook. I
Yeah,
don't know if I said that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, what's interesting about the power ups too is you don't get them when you need them. You have to. It forces you to backtrack, which would be. I think it's a cool idea because it allows you to explore different levels in a new way once with these new power ups. Though in the second level, Andy's Yard, you need the rocket boots to beat RC in the RC race. You don't need them if you can cheese that race.
Oh, can you?
Yeah.
Please give us this hot tip because I
Yes.
definitely tried and could not do it.
All
Same.
you have to do is when you see RC coming, because you'll be able to accelerate much more quickly than he can right off the gate, right?
Yeah.
But he's going to catch up to you real fast. Just stand in front of him. He'll bump into the back of you and free and pause for a little bit. So every time you see him coming up on screen, just stand in front of his path. He won't get out of your way. He won't get out of the way, and he just bumps into you and like gets stunned for like a second. And so you just do that for 3 laps. I never really had to slow down. I didn't have to stop or anything. The first time I did it as a kid, I did because I couldn't react fast enough. So I would like run like 5 steps, wait for him to get up to me, then be like, haha, you can't pass. And then I would take another like 10 steps or whatever, turn around so I could see him come and wait for it and then let him bump into me.
Take you like
So,
45 minutes to
fool.
get yeah. It's like a super long race when it's supposed to be like 45 seconds.
I'm a speed runner.
Yeah. Watch this, kids.
That's amazing.
The backtracking thing I was surprised.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jiggy. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say kind of the same thing. I was kind of surprised. I didn't the level so it kind of triggers my OCD a little bit because I'm like, I wanna complete and get all 5 tokens as I'm doing a level. And the one that really got like that one in particular didn't get me as much. I was like, oh, I got to get the power up and come back.
Yeah.
The one that did trigger me was in the alleys and gullies level. I think that's what it's called.
Mhm.
And you need the grappling hook to actually get up and fight the boss.
Yeah.
Which the mini bosses feel more significant. And like, I don't know, it just felt like I didn't like that. I didn't like that I had to backtrack with the grappling hook.
Well, because by that point you can get to all the mini bosses without anything extra, like backtracking at least. I know it's still somewhat early in the game, so maybe that's part of it, but it kind of feels out of character for the game because you're in that level. Why not use what's available to you in that level for that level's boss, right? Which is what feels a little bit weird. That is by far the level that I liked the least, I think. I don't know what it was about it.
Oh, really?
It felt very awkward. Maybe there's just too much jumping, too much timing. Like when you have to climb up on like, I don't know, is it umbrellas or something? I can't remember what it is.
It's umbrellas. Yeah. There is balloons that you can hop onto, which I always hated because the drawstrings, it was so easy to just jump right through.
Right through.
It was kind of hard.
I actually only got 2 of the Pizza Planet tokens in that level in my preparation for this because I couldn't in general, listeners, there is 5 Pizza Planet not in general, there are 5 Pizza Planet tokens in every level. There are generally a handful of challenges that kind of repeat or rhyme, I guess is a better way to put it in some of them. So you always give Ham 50 coins and then you get a Pizza Planet token. That's always one of them. However, there's always like a collect 5 of this random thing in order to get another one. In this level specifically, the alleys and gullies, it's 5 rubber duckies.
Right.
And I couldn't find all of them. There's actually a good one hidden in like this like puddle off the side of the road where it's like there's like road work being done and it's just like a 3-foot deep like swimming pool of mud that that one I remember as a kid gave me trouble because I couldn't find it for ages. Now I remember where it's at, but you know it has those orange barriers, so as a kid I'm like, oh, I can't go in there. There's orange barriers.
There's construction there. I can't go there.
Mom and Dad said that's dangerous.
What's cool about that is just you're totally right. They're like kind of reskins of the same mission.
Right.
But what's cool about that is that they're kind of themed for every level. So alleys and gullies, because it's raining and there's water everywhere, rubber duckies. And like the construction zone has little I don't know what they're called, little tykes, I want to say, but maybe that's
Yep.
not
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
But
No,
the
no,
little
tights. You got it right.
little
Yeah.
tykes, the little construction workers, and you got to go find them.
I love
And
those. I love those.
they're fun to kind of hunt and collect, and they all make unique noises and look different. Like the rubber
Mhm.
duckies are like, you know, and you got to like kind of listen for it, and you're like, I'm close. Where is it? I can't find it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun. I would say, are there any of those that you guys particularly disliked, like those kind of missions? Because I can tell you that anytime Slinky showed up and was like, "Hey Buzz, I need you to
Oh.
collect these wrenches in 5 seconds and bring them back to me," and I was like, I hate these missions. Like they're really small. They take like 2 seconds to beat. I'm like, we could have done something like more creative. And then
Yeah.
alternatively, I really like the unique missions that were like kind of level one-offs. One I particularly liked and I remembered a lot was in the construction site. You could mix paint. You could use your stomp to like squish paint out, and then you had to mix certain colors and then like lay them out. And I don't know why I found it satisfying with like the sound effects and like just watching the sludge come down and just and change colors. It was cool.
Yeah, that one.
But-
I actually I really like the construction stage specifically. I thought a lot of the early ones, aside from the alleys one, the early ones were pretty good. I did like the toy barn. Al's toy barn was kind of fun. But yeah, the paint one's kind of fun too because it's simple. Like we, you know, as adults we understand what color goes with what or whatever. But as a kid, I have a feeling that like, you know, it's there to be like, hey kids, this color and this color makes this color. You know, like you do that a few times and it's sort of that's how things work. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I can accept that. It's simple, but I can accept that. I like that kind of thing. But at least, like you said, at least they're themed. They're different. The Slinky stuff didn't bother me because those are in like so many games. Yes, it kind of feels like filler, I guess. Unfortunately, where it's like we need.
It just feels lazy.
One.
I don't know.
It is a little bit.
You know what? I will say that I agree they're not my favorite, but I don't know if I would actually classify them as lazy. And here's why. Now I don't know about the rest of the game, but at least in the first 2 Slinky ones, the first time you see Slinky, from what I remember, is in the level 4, the construction yard, and then the one after that is level 6. Not level 6. Sorry, the very next level 5, alleys and gullies. It tests you on different 3D platforming skills. In the 4th one, it's all sand. It's the quicksand. So how can you traverse an area without so you have to you basically just have to jump a whole bunch. It's a really simple skill, but it's teaching you like, okay, there's this type of ground that you can't stand on. I don't even know if you die if you sink too far into it. I don't think you do.
I don't know. I did it in one shot, so I have no
just
idea.
Goes slow.
Yeah.
In level 5 with the alleys and gullies, all of the wrenches are there's a platform in the middle of like this sewer, pretty much a sewer drain, and they're all just off the platform, so you have to jump and then do your double jump back the direction you came. So the first one kind of teaches you movement skills, the second one kind of teaches you kind of platforming in a 3D space. Like it's somewhat, honestly, a little bit challenging because if you miss one, you're screwed. You can't complete the challenge and you have to go back and do it again. Now, with that said, while I do think they serve that purpose, does that come back do the things they teach you in those little exercises ever come back throughout the rest of the game? That I don't remember. So I think it's a cool idea. It may not have been implemented well depending on how the rest of the game plays out. Like I said, listeners, I did beat this as a kid and I got up to level 7 in preparation for this, but my memory of the last half of the game is a little groggy, and there's a lot left of the game after level 7. That is about the halfway point.
Yeah, 7's about halfway. I would say I think maybe as a kid or as someone who would be having like earlier experience in platforming, especially 3D platforming, I think it would maybe have a little bit of experience, like you would be able to build a little bit of a skill.
Especially back when this was contemporary.
Exactly, yeah. But now the whole jump, like the alleys one where you're saying you use the double jump to go back to where you were, jump out and then back again. Like I knew immediately that was going to be the way that I was going to do it, whether the game wanted me to or not, because I have that skill to be able to do that now. Whether the game is easy to maneuver that way is a different story, but I knew that for me, I'm going to go to the edge, jump, come back, jump, come back, jump, and I did it, and I did most of the Slinky stuff in 1 or 2 shots because I have that experience now. But I think 20 plus years ago, it probably would have been something that would be more of a skill based token that I would have to get. And yeah, I see what you know. What, man, you made a good argument. I think there is something.
Yeah, I
there's
think
more
you did
to
too.
it there.
Actually,
I'm not saying you have to
Shit,
enjoy
here we
them.
are.
There's a difference between it doing something to teach you something and you actually finding enjoyment. That's okay.
Sure.
Like I actually, that one I was telling you about in Alleys and Gullies, I'm not a big fan of. I don't like because already with the camera angles in this game are a little awkward compared to modern sensibilities. So trying to like angle it and do it right, once you get the hang of it, it's not awful, but it still was not my favorite as well. I will say this is a little bit of a tangent, but a platformer that has I love any game that lets me do a double jump, and if a game gives you a double jump and it's not satisfying, it's a real big problem in my opinion. This game has a really satisfying double jump. I love the feel of it. My only issue is ledge detection. There are so many fucking times when I would
100%.
run up to a ledge. I'm like, I know I can grab onto you. Why aren't you letting me grab onto you? Because you let me do it before, like 10 minutes ago, or maybe not a lot, like 5 tries ago. Why can't I do it now? It doesn't make any sense. But like low key, I think a really underrated element of a good 3D platformer is a solid double jump. It is one of the most like, I don't know, it's like almost like it's one of the most satisfying and like I can't think the word I'm trying to like tactilely. If even though I know tactile is like physical touch, to me like a good double jump is like almost this tactile response. It feels so good to do, and this game really nails it. I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And similar to like grabbing onto ledges and stuff, if you know that you've got your timing and your spacing correct or whatever in any kind of game, whether it's 2D or 3D, when the character latches on and you know you just got it, like sometimes that's on purpose, right? They put it at a distance so that it feels like you just got it. This game has some of those. And then sometimes you're like, well, what the hell? Why didn't you grab it? You were right there, man. Like you did it, like you said, 10 seconds ago. Why not now? Like, what am I doing wrong about this jump? Like
Alleys and Gullies, man. In the one section with the watermelon stand, there's a box that you can push from the watermelon stand. There's like 2 tables.
100%.
There's like,
I know exactly what you're talking about. I had the
We all
same
do.
issue.
We all do.
It was
watermelon
awful.
stand, easiest fucking thing to climb onto. The box on the right side of it, like on the opposite end of that alley, you can get it one every like 12 times. It feels like.
I wonder
like,
what that is. I wonder what that is. I don't really understand it. I don't know why things like that. It's something to do. Obviously, has something to do with the technical and the programming and stuff, right? But it's so odd that something like that would happen, because largely the platforming, I think, is it's awkward because of the camera a little bit with the 64, and it's a little bit awkward sometimes because you don't quite know what your angle is. A lot of that is the camera, but it's collision detection and stuff too, right? Sometimes you just go, like you mentioned with the balloons, or you're climbing a tree or something, you just sort of go right through it sometimes. Like, why? Like, unless you're in the middle of Buzz, sometimes it feels like he's never going to grab on, and I don't get that.
I think sorry, go ahead, Jakey. No, I cut you off. Go for it.
I was just gonna say one thing we didn't really talk about in the moveset, and probably for good reason, because it's only implemented like maybe a handful of times, with the exception of when you get the grappling hook power up, is the fact that there is a first person mode. You tap R, you go into first person, and you can aim and fire your laser. Yeah, you forget about it because while it is a mechanic and the game specifically shows you that it's a mechanic, they don't use it very often. It's really cool in the very first level when you go into the crib and it's like there's a first person, like shoot the locks. You feel kind of James Bondy and you shoot the locks. And it's got a really cool, like graphically, it has like a reflection of Buzz on the actual helmet, like
which is
around like
is a callback to the first movie. When you first see him, it's a first person perspective and you can see his face, which at the time the technology was like, oh my god, his reflection in the plastic. Anyways,
I bet you that reflection was matted on. I bet you.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's just an image. It's just an image that's like,
I'll take it.
The opacities drop, but it's cool.
No, you bring up that first level with the crib. Low key, I think that's my favorite level. I don't think it's the best one, but I think the reason is because as a kid, I think that that level made me fall in love with the game
Yeah.
because it felt like you were playing Toy Story. You
Mm.
were this tiny toy in Andy's house. You could go up to the attic. You could go down to the basement. There's a garage. There's a living room. There's a kitchen. Like it was a full fucking house. Minus obviously you can't go into any of the bedrooms upstairs, but it felt like a real house, which
Right.
I couldn't believe they did in this. And I do think this game does push the boundaries of the 64 a little bit too hard, or maybe I'm not going to say it was programmed poorly because I do not know. I'm not a game dev, but I would like, in all honesty, my biggest criticisms for this game. Yeah, I'm sure some people may not end up liking some level design choices, but like it's more on a technical level. Like, and it happened in the first level, it happened in a couple different things. Frame rate issues, there's a lot of frame rate dropping. It was very stuttery at times. Obviously, the ledge detection was a little rough. And also the camera, which I'm willing to forgive the camera because of the time that it came out. Like, that was just, compared to the contemporaries, I'm not going to harp on something. Modern context, it's not great, but it's also nowhere near the worst that I've experienced.
No. Yeah.
And like specifically to bring it back to that level that I was talking about, the basement, I always found there was a lot of frame basement and garage. There was always a lot of frame rate drops. I think because there's a lot of enemies in that area.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite things to do in Andy's house is you go to the top of the steps and you would see if you could jump off of it at its height and see if you could land on the handrail and then walk down the handrail to get the battery at the knob at the bottom of it. It was always this really precise movement, but if you're able to do it, it was so satisfying.
Yeah, I'd agree that I think any level, I kind of have this thing in games that any level that makes me feel like I'm in a giant room or something, like I'm small in a giant house, is really cool. Al's penthouse, which is a later level in the game, very similar, similar vibe. But I do think that going back to Andy's, it's just like it's colorful, it's fun, it shows all the mechanics. It introduces us to a lot of the missions that we do. It has a couple power-ups. It's got a lot of different places to explore. It's got a sweet boss fight in the attic with the robot, the mini boss. Like, I'm looking at the mini bosses, and that one is definitely one of the top tier mini bosses in my opinion. I also really enjoyed I guess actually this one isn't a mini boss. This is actually a full boss, but the slime boss in the alleys and gullies is
That's
like
a cool mechanic.
Probably my favorite boss of the game, just because I like he grows, you shoot him as fast as possible, he shrinks down, and then once he gets small enough, he goes in his trash can and then comes out even bigger, and you're like, oh, let's do it, rinse and repeat, but it's so satisfying. And then they give you a power up at the end, like a courtesy power up, and then you just lay it on him, just with the laser. It's just, they knew what they were doing. It was awesome.
Say my only criticism of that boss fight is that it's not well broadcast what you need to do, because when you shoot him, he doesn't flinch. There's no sound effect like it's hitting him, and he doesn't like flash. He does visually get smaller, but if you only shoot once or twice, you don't see it very well. It's very hard to distinctly see it. But if you shoot it a bunch and you see him shrink, you go, okay, I see what the mechanic is. Then you have to do it like 5 times. I think the mechanic is really cool. I just wish they would have made it a little bit more visually noticeable that is what you're supposed to do. Because I don't think the game does a good enough job telling you, like, when you shoot him, to make it that it'll make him small. And if you can shoot him enough, he'll squeeze inside the trash can, and that's how you damage him. If they had made it where it was much more visible that he shrunk, I think it would have been a lot better. But I think the actual idea is fucking great. I'm kind of with you on that, Jiggy. I like the boss. I just wish it was a little bit more visually noticeable. To
He's
make
just
it
got style. He's got style. You know,
he has
he's
no
like
grace.
He's green.
Or sorry, no, you brought up your favorite boss with the slime monster.
Yeah,
slime trash. Slime time.
Slime time.
I mean, I didn't
3
get
minutes.
You ain't going nowhere.
Slime time.
I don't really. I would say if anything, and this is only because of nostalgia, and I haven't been able to replay the entire game to remember the latter half. The first mini boss, the Tin Robot, and I say it because of this. I figured out like a good way to, because what I like about that first mini boss is that the camera will stay focused on him, so you don't have to worry about adjusting it or this and that. I think it's a really nice change that the game devs do, so that way you don't have to constantly finagle with the camera. And it was really satisfying once you understood the boss's pattern of how to dodge it. You could just charge up a shot, and you would almost like you'd run away from him and then kind of like run towards him, and the camera would kind of swoop around, and then you could shoot him, and then you would or you have to keep dodging him until he would turn over and his key would automatically crank, and then you could hit him. And for some reason, like, I don't think that is a creative boss, mind you. It's really it's a basic ass Mario boss. You know, you hit him like 2 or 3 times, wait for his vulnerable spot. In terms of actual mechanics, it's really not anything special, but it's just satisfying to me, just the way the camera kind of swoops around once you get into the right rhythm, and it's just really fun to do. So yeah, that's mine though. What about you, Dave? Do you have any favorite bosses?
I do. You know, it's funny. I have like a small story about the first one because I had no experience with this game. I just sort of knew about it, and that's it. I definitely recognized the cover. That was something I recognized before I hit play on the game. When I jumped up to that spot and started fighting the robot, I didn't even know it was like a mini boss or whatever, because I didn't really know what the enemies were yet. That was the first area I went up to because it's pretty close to the bedroom and whatever. So I just thought like this was one of, sure, a slightly more difficult one, but I just sort of like powered my way through it. I don't remember exactly what I did, but yeah, it was a charge up shot. I'm sure it was, like you said, fairly easy to figure out or whatever, but I was like, oh, cool. I got a token. Oh, I'm supposed to collect tokens. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Right. Like that sort of quote unquote mini boss, like taught me that I needed to collect tokens and taught me that there are mini bosses. And you know, it's just it's like you're sort of talking about before how the level itself is simplified but well designed. I think that's one of those things that, to your point, that backs that up for sure. So I actually didn't really like the slime monster one because I just found all I'm doing is just pressing the button. All I'm doing is going like this. I'm just okay as fast as I can. Yeah.
Oh, that's the best.
I don't know. Maybe I wanted more out of it. Maybe it's just because that stage really just didn't do it for me, and I was just sort of soured on it. Yeah, it was definitely one of the stages where I was like, I'm not really interested in going back to this when I get the abilities that I need.
Okay. So Alleys and Gullies, because you both said it's not one of your favorite stages, I didn't mind it.
Okay.
It's definitely not my favorite. I didn't mind it. One stage in particular that I did not really care for was actually Andy's neighborhood.
Really?
And the only reason why it felt,
it was Rex, wasn't it? It was Rex.
Yeah, it was Rex. I don't know. I like elements of it. I wanted to like it, but it just, I don't know what it was. It was too small, too empty, as opposed to like the house. I felt like there was so much, and maybe it's just because you're coming off of the house. Like you're coming off the high of the house, and that stage is so strong. And then this stage, it's not bad. It just wasn't my favorite. And there was something about it, and I can't really peg exactly why it wasn't my favorite, because the pool I loved. The pool, that specific section, the tree I loved. But like the other yards and like your yard and the little sidewalk area racing RC, I just was like, it just didn't do it for me.
I also remember Elevator Hop not being great, but it's been years since I've got to that. What did you guys think of Elevator Hop? Because I just remember the name. I don't remember much about it. I just remember not enjoying it as a kid.
I did enjoy it, but I know that I'm in the minority, because I could see objectively if somebody was playing this, they would hate it, because it's almost like a maze, but it's a maze like to go up. You're like, did I go up this way to get up here? And the only reason why I say I enjoy it is because for some reason I like those 3D type levels that are like based bottom to top rather than
You like
moving.
verticality.
Yeah, I like verticality, exactly. Like Frantic Factory and like Donkey Kong 64 was one of my favorite levels, and that's the
Good
same
level.
concept. And Click Clack Woods, Banjo Kazooie, same
Yep.
concept. It's
Yep.
just moving up things, and that's the level you get the grappling hook, and you can unlock shortcuts, and there's a lot of climbing. And I
That's
just
true.
feel like it's a unique perspective, and I appreciate it. I think I appreciate it mostly because it differentiates itself as a level, which is also I also like the tree in Andy's neighborhood for that same reason, but it's
Yeah.
significantly smaller.
Yeah.
And maybe if it had more of that, I would have liked it more.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I didn't mind the elevator. Now that you think, I wasn't playing through it going like, oh, this is frustrating or this doesn't work or whatever. I found it was okay. I like the oh, I think is it just called airport? I should look up what it's called.
There's
Yeah,
tarmac trouble. There's airport infiltration.
where
Those are
you
the
face
two.
what's his face
Pete.
Stinky Pete. Yeah, that one. Yeah, Stinky Pete. So like. Yeah.
I guess that's why they call me Stinky Pete.
the outtakes at the end of Toy Story 2.
The fake
best.
outtakes are amazing.
The best.
I
They're so
love
good.
those outtakes.
Yeah,
Although
my favorite
I still think
one.
Monsters Inc. stacks up tall.
Yeah. My favorite one from I think it's from Toy Story 2. Yeah, I'm pretty sure is Barbie when she's like saying bye to everybody. She's like bye bye everybody, bye bye, and then she sort of like trails off eventually and goes, "Are they gone? Oh my god! Thank God, my cheeks are killing me." I just think that is just a brilliant, simple joke. Anyways, airport infiltration level 13, where you face Stinky Pete. There it is. I found it. I liked it. It has, the moving tracks and things like that as well. Like those little things. Yeah, it's still simple-ish. But I don't know. It sort of meshed well with me. I enjoyed that stage quite a bit. So.
I also really liked the construction yard for the same reason Jiggy was talking about some of the other ones with the verticality of it. I love climbing up that building that is being constructed, all the different beams and like how things move across. It does suck though. I remember as a kid I hated it because I was still learning how to do 3D platforming, and if you fall, you fucking fall to the bottom. But there are workarounds, because as you progress up this building, there are these little switches, and if you stomp on them, there's an elevator on the side, so it acts as little like check marks. I'm honestly surprised in this game how relatively fair the difficulty is. Like, you have this giant fucking building you have to climb up. In other games, if you fell, you do that whole thing again. In this game, there's like 3 or 4 check marks so long as you hit the lever. So long as you got to the lever and hit it. I think that's really cool. In general, there's only 5 tokens that you need to get. I keep saying in general. There are only 5 tokens in each level.
Did you find a secret one that we don't know about?
Yeah, I know, right? And you can complete them in any order, and once you get one, you can exit the level. That's your way of saving an exit. So if you're ever worried about like losing progress, as long as you exit the level, it essentially saves your progress. Well, you have to then tell the game to save, but still, it's pretty straightforward. Like, I'm honestly really impressed with how fair this game is, considering at the time it came out. I'm not saying games were out like NES hard, but like this was still an era of like still learning how to develop games in 3D and how to like what's fair checkpointing and whatnot. Like in general, like I don't like, so I have to go back and I'm probably going to play more of this game even after we're done recording, because I really do enjoy it. Like I'm at Al's Toy Barn right now. And if I want to, I can go back. I have 2 of the 5 tokens in Alleys and Gullies, and I can go back and figure out how the fuck to do the rest of that stupid level as I go. But it doesn't feel insurmountable, versus like if I were to go play, like I'm trying to think of something contemporary right now. If I were to go, I can't think of something contemporary at the moment that would be like a good example, but just, think of like any hard NES game, or like even some of the other like early 3D games, especially on like the PS2, like like this is a couple years later, but I guess that maybe even proves my point that they should have known. Like Jak 2 is some of those bullshit checkpoints you'll ever see in any video game. but this game feels very, very fair. Fun fact, actually, I normally on my own show, I normally on my own show go into a lot of the history of the game. I didn't really do a lot of research for this one, but the developer of this game, Traveler's Tales, they're now currently the developer of all the Lego games. Like they're still a thing, and they're outrageously popular because they do all the Lego games.
They did Crash for a while too, I think.
They did Crash Twinsanity, which shout out to my buddy Bill over at the Gaming and Collecting podcast, because he did an episode on the Crash Twinsanity somewhat recently, a game that I had I didn't give two fucking shits about, because
it's really funny.
That's what they were saying.
It's
I'm like,
really funny.
I feel like I missed out on this, so I kind of want to give it a shot. And Traveler's Tales developed that as well, so it's kind of cool to see their pedigree start this early.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, this is a relatively easy game comparatively, which kind of makes sense for the direction they went with the Lego games, which are a lot more like
casual,
kid friendly. Yeah, a lot more casual. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can see that there's pieces of this Lego of this toys. I called
just
out
do another toy brand. That's all they did.
That's all they did. So unoriginal. But also it pays the bills. You can see that like there's elements early on of like of this to the early Lego games as well. Obviously, 15 years of doing Lego games and different iterations and stuff, they can make them huge. Like the Star Wars one, the most recent one, is massive. But the early Lego games are still, you could see, like they're simplified, forgiving. I mean, they're all kind of forgiving, but like you could see that if this was a Lego game, if they did Lego Toy Story, it would make sense if it played just like this and acted just like this, because it has some, lighthearted humor because of the property that it's using, because you can build things or you can move and collect certain things. Like it kind of does make sense, when you really look at it. And I think that this game's pretty damn good. I was surprised. I honestly was.
Do you guys want to talk about the music at all?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
If it touches on my heartstrings and my nostalgia in any way, which all three Toy Story, well, 4, but first 3 especially, I'm all for it. Let's go.
I do want to say one thing, just because I didn't bring it up. I love the Mr. Potato Head missions. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just love collecting his body
like
parts. It's so funny to me.
This game gives you all the gadgets.
Yes, that's right. Oh yeah, he's
cool.
cute.
Yeah.
He's got a bowler
But he
hat
holds
and
out.
everything.
You gotta do something for him first.
007.
Buzz Lightyear.
Find my ear, and I'll give you what you need.
And I'll give you this exploding pen if you find my ear.
Yeah, did you have a particular like song or stage or something that either you loved or didn't love? Or
I just wanted to comment and say I didn't really enjoy the music from this game. Like it's fine, it's the Toy Story music, but it's it's so repetitive, and it's like it doesn't mesh perfectly well with the sound effects all the time. And the sound effects are kind of obnoxious at times too. Like I don't hate the sound design. Like I don't think it's bad enough that it's like, oh my god, I can't do this. But I just don't think it's like anything to write home about.
It's not a standout. It's definitely not one of the standouts. Like not even close. Yeah. And that's the thing too. When I was looking up the differences between these games, because the 64 one was kind of like a port of, I think, either the Dreamcast or the PlayStation, and those, because they, I guess PlayStation, had discs, they were able to do more with the music, so they weren't as repetitive. They probably played more of the song, whereas this, I think, it seemed like it was like chunks of like 40 seconds or 30 seconds.
I mean, that's usually what it is. That's because the N64 could only hold so much memory on their cartridges. Exactly. They had to there was limitations. Corners were cut
constantly.
It's definitely a mid soundtrack, kind of all around. I will say there are a couple moments where I was listening to the soundtrack and I was like, this is kind of a little bop. Alleys and Gullies stuck into my head because it sounds very like big business, like jazzy, kind of like New York.
Yeah, it is jazzy. Yeah.
It's got a kind of a cool vibe, but generally speaking, if you like the song "You've Got a Friend in Me," you'll probably like the soundtrack.
You've got a
because
friend in this song.
That's 90% of the sound in this game. It just constantly plays that song. Every menu, like every like slideshow or whatever before the game start or before the level starts.
stage,
Like
yeah.
it just keeps repeating that song on loop.
I'm fine
So,
with it. I
yeah.
love the little like you know, the lyrics in the song are great and everything, but the little sort of, you know, simplified. I just, man, my heart just like swells. My heart swells when I hear that song. Like it just,
I do the little mouth
at
flute every podcast we do for whatever game.
Yeah, please, yeah.
I just realized that.
Please get it, yeah. It's please keep it going. I don't know what's next, but please keep it going.
I did it for every single one we've done.
Remember.
I've done it at some point.
I'm gonna start editing in the actual song over it so that it really meshes and it'll just show how talented you truly are, sir. So it's all good.
That's it. Perfect.
For me with this game, this was one of the first games that I remember playing where I would play my own music and turn the game down so I could listen to my own music. And I don't mean that actually as a criticism of it, believe it or not, because I did this even with games I like the soundtrack for.
Yeah,
It was just one of those ones where, and it was just one of the ones where like I would end up doing it. Now I have a very distinct memory. This is gonna date this, like, not this episode, but this is gonna make me sound old as fuck. I would listen to, at the time, the hot new album that was out was NSYNC's No Strings Attached, baby.
Yes, it was.
Oh gosh.
I loved that album when I was younger. And no lie, still pretty, there's some bops on that. I'm not gonna lie. There's some good songs on there.
Yeah.
But I don't really listen to it anymore, but I loved it.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
well, there's a song on there called "Just Got Paid" or "Friday Night" or something like that, and for some reason, I would listen to it on the construction yard level a lot. I have very distinct memories of exploring that freaking rafters in the building, and you just hear "Just Got Paid Friday Night, party up and feeling right." Or whatever it is.
So you had that. If it was me and I had this game, it would probably be, I think one of the Blink albums came out in '99, and probably Eminem. That's probably what I was listening. Definitely, I was like, you know, I probably shouldn't have had those albums because I was just going to be a teenager at that point, so it was probably just a little too young. So whoever bought them for me, that's probably what I was listening to with my headphones and my Discman. But yeah, it's not necessarily, it doesn't actually, you're right, it doesn't really say that like the game sounds terrible or anything, right? Like I do think that there's something to that where sure, it's, you know, you're playing your own thing over it, but that's okay. You know, it doesn't mean that the game's
you do
not
that
good.
For good games too. If you just like, if you've heard the soundtrack a whole bunch of times and you're in the mood for, or specifically, like I know some people listen to it in RPGs for when they're grinding levels and stuff like that. Like, you know,
I've been
like
doing
that.
it. You said you didn't date the episode, but I'm going to date this episode currently because in 2023 I'm playing a crap ton of Diablo 4, and I've gotten into listening to podcasts or music while playing Diablo 4 because I've done the story. I'm doing grinding afterwards, similar to like you were just saying with RPGs, and I'm fine with it. It's okay. Like I have the visual cues. I don't really need the sound cues in that game, and if you can get away with it, you get away with it. So what? You're having a good time playing the game anyways. It's not like I dislike either of these games, but I see what you mean.
Now, I have a question for you. Have you covered The World Is Not Enough yet on this show?
We have not.
I love that game.
I have not played it.
If you have me on for that, I have another story of me listening to music over the game, which is a little amusing, which I will save. Even if you don't have me on, I'll send you an audio clip of it for you to play, just so you can have the story on.
It's that good. All right, amazing.
I'm not. No. I'm lower your expectations.
No, it's that good. I said it. It's that good. Yeah.
And since we all gave songs or whatever that we were listening to, let's see. I don't know exactly how old I was, but Aaron Carter, the album that had "I Want Candy" on it, definitely was Boom, ba-doom, da-doom, ba-doom,
Oh
doom. Yeah,
man, I
heck
feel
yeah.
so old. God damn.
Not Eminem for sure. My mom would not let me listen to that.
I
There's no
know
way.
I grew up in a very conservative Christian household. There,
I did as well.
we were not allowed. There was hesitation for us playing Pokemon because there was evolution. The Pokemon evolved. You can't.
Dude, dude, oh my gosh, we have the same life story because I remember watching an episode of the Pokemon anime, and my mom came in, and it was a specific episode where Bulbasaur was trying not to evolve, and they were like, "Why don't you want to evolve, Bulbasaur?" And my mom's like, "What?" and so and I had Pokemon Blue, and there was like my little like under the covers like play at night with my little Game Boy Warm
Yeah.
light, like
Yeah.
hiding it. You know,
Yeah.
I still did it. She knew I did it, but there was no stopping the Pokemon machine of
No
the
way.
late
Not.
'90s.
Oh
No,
man,
sorry,
and
mom.
I love my
But not really.
both my parents and my mom to pieces, but she
Yeah.
fell into that Christian propaganda fucking hardcore.
Yeah.
She for years thought Dungeons and Dragons summoned demons and Satan and all this other stuff.
Oh yeah.
And like when I started playing it with friends, she's like, I don't know about that. I was like, she wasn't gonna stop me. I was an adult, but she still expressed concern about
Had
it.
the
I'm like,
questions. Yeah.
there's
yeah.
no spells, Mom. What are you talking about?
I gotta tell you this. Right on topic. My mother told me that Pikachu. She heard this on like Christian radio or something, but she told me that Pikachu in Japanese meant demon. And I was like, what? And I remember being like the 8-9-year-old that I was, and internet fresh out there, and using Dogpile, not Google, Dogpile.
Mhm.
I know.
And I would go in and I dogpiled it, and Pokemon in or a Pikachu in Japanese meant sparkling glitter mouse or something. And I remember being like, Mom, you're wrong, and telling her and like explaining it to her, and she's still like,
I don't know. I'm not so sure about that.
where did you learn that?
One final story. This isn't a personal story of mine, but it's someone I had on my show. It involves Pokemon, and then I guess we should wrap it back up with Toy Story 2, of course.
I mean, yeah.
Well, so I had a guy on my show named Jeremy Blaustein. Jeremy Blaustein is a localizer. He is famous for localizing games like Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill. He also did Silent Hill 2. I don't know if he did 1. He also did oh my gosh, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Like he localized them over to English. He also worked on the Pokemon TV show. Actually, his sister, before she passed away, was the voice of Meowth on Pokemon. That's
No
how
way.
he
Is that
found out.
right?
Maddie Blaustein, yeah, his sister. So he was a localizer for Pokemon. Now, the whole reason I thought of this ties in with when you mentioned Pikachu and translating it to Japanese, because there was a joke in the original Japanese. It was, I forget which version of which Pokemon show it was. It was like Professor Oak had a brother that liked to tell puns or something like that. This was like past when I stopped watching before he showed up. Well, the pun in Japanese was, I don't remember the whole setup, but he says Pimanchu, which literally means like steak. So it's supposed, instead of Pikachu, you say Pimanchu. And you can see where the pun in Japanese would come in, because it's close enough to Pikachu, steak, blah, blah, blah. But if you were to translate that literally, which is why, kids, localization is so fucking important and should be considered writing and not just translating.
Yep.
If you just translate it, you would translate it as steak chew, which is not a fucking joke. It is just a line that makes no sense. And so he told the story on my show where he goes, he went to his supervisor. He's like, hey, how do you want me to localize this to keep the intent of the original? Because I can't, steak chew doesn't make sense. No one's gonna laugh at that.
Yeah.
The joke's gone. It's not a joke anymore. And his boss basically told him, like, just shut up and translate. And he apparently did not handle that well, and that's the story of how he got fired from Pokemon.
Oh my god! What? On that specific...
Jeremy Blaustein's an awesome dude. Really, he was really funny, really, really good guy. Really enjoyed it. It was a couple of years ago that I had him on, but one of my favorite episodes I've ever got. I had
That's
one of the
awesome.
favorite people I've ever had the pleasure of talking to.
I'm going back
Amazing.
then. I gotta listen. I'm going back. So as far as Toy Story 2 goes, as far as this one goes,
No Pimanchu there.
no Pimanchu, no Pika steak, none of that stuff. Overall, we've sort of talked about a lot of aspects of it. Overall, this game is pretty great, I think. Personally, I had a great time with it. It was fun to play for the first time. And Josh, honestly, when I was like, usually when I'm asking people like what, trying to decide what games we should play or whatever, I always defer to the person that's going to be coming on, because I want to know what works for them, and a lot of the time, again, like I said earlier, I'm very surprised I never played this because I'm such a huge Toy Story fan. I had an N64. I don't know why I never played this before, but I'm sad that I didn't, because I think even at the time I would have enjoyed it. I think it's one of those games that would have stuck with me like it has with you guys. So so I really enjoyed it. Jiggy, what was the sort of like, I guess, quote unquote, updated thought or updated thoughts as you continue to work through it on your own YouTube page as well?
Well, I would say that I went into it very positively because I
Okay.
had a lot of memories of it. A lot of I remember playing this game for hours and really
Mm-hmm.
enjoying it and doing a lot of things. And I think I actually went in and my opinion of it actually went down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And not in the fact that the game is bad, but the fact that I went in with the mindset of it's great, and I kind of was a little disappointed, and I'm like, well, it doesn't live up to what I remember of it. It
Yeah.
just doesn't hold up as well as other games like Banjo or Donkey Kong. Even I would probably say it's good.
Yep.
It's better than okay, but it's not great. So I would say it's good. It's somewhere in that 7.5 out of 10 range for me.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a solid experience, and you're not going to regret playing it. The thing I really appreciate about it is the fact that there's 5 tokens in a level. First off, as far as I remember, you don't need all of the tokens.
No.
So it's optional to collect them all, and they're very the levels are very fast paced. Like, honestly, if you're trying to get all the tokens, it's going to take you a max of 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes to complete a level. So it's really fast paced, and I appreciate that. And I could see this being a cool game. Like, if people are really into speed running, I'm sure there's a lot of weird stuff
I'm
you can
sure
do.
there's some cool
It's
stuff.
one of those games that I'm just like, this would be a cool speed running
It's
game.
set
for
up
sure.
for that for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
So,
Yeah.
what'd you think?
For myself, I think it. Well, first off, I think listeners, if Dave's words doesn't tell you to play it, I don't know what will, because Jiggy and I have nostalgia for this game, and those rose-colored glasses can wipe away a lot of sins in a game.
Mhm.
So if Dave enjoyed it without those rose-colored glasses tinting his view on it, it's worth checking out for that alone. For myself, it still honestly holds up. I was a little more frustrated with the camera that I remember as a kid. I didn't remember all the frame rate issues that I experienced with it, but overall, I think what I like about it is that each area feels really well, at least from what I've played. Once again, I haven't finished rebeating the game, so some of the stuff is fuzzy, but it feels like each area is very purposeful. It doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of unnecessary empty areas that you don't need to go to. There's obviously empty areas within a room, but that feels more lived in. It doesn't feel like, it's not like Jack and Daxter where you'll walk into a room and just be like, why is this here? There's no reason for this room to be here. Um, and not trying to shit on Jack and Daxter, mind you, that's one of my favorite series, but it's that is actually a thing though in that series. They'll design a space and then put purpose into the space, versus
Right.
like Ratchet and Clank's model. They're competing 3D platformer at the time. They would design a purpose for the space and then to design the level around what their ideas were. Which I think is a lot, which is my preferred. I enjoy that a little bit more. Um,
Mhm.
and with this, each level feels very purposeful. It's very fun. The verticality, once again, I think the verticality is one of the most satisfying things, because I think I think ultimately, I'll conclude with this. The reason why this game has still resonates with me 20 some odd years later is because when you look around a level, it feels like there's still hidden things to find in every level, no matter how many times you
Mm,
play, because the levels are they're not massive, but they're tall. There's lots of
Mm-hmm.
different, and there's
Yes.
there's lower levels and upper levels and all this other stuff. And some of them are expansive, like Andy's yard or Andy's neighborhood, where there's like 4 or 5 different yards you can explore, and one of them has a giant tree that you can climb up, which once again, verticality. But it always feels like there's some new place that you have not been able to grab onto yet. Like like when you first enter a level, you can see all the different places. Like, oh, I bet I could climb there. Oh, I bet I could climb there. You get into a level and you see possibilities within the mechanics that you've been taught
yeah,
so far.
yeah,
And I think that that excites me as a player, where it's like I can see all the things I can do and I can't wait to do them.
right.
And I don't think a lot of games, and this isn't like a soapboxy type of thing. I just don't think a lot of games give me that same feeling. Like you don't get into a level and be like, look at, like, I can see all this cool stuff I can do if I can just figure out how to do it. They give it to you piecemeal versus just showing you, 4 or 5 things at a time and letting you kind of figure them out as you go along. So
Hmm.
I think this game really holds up to me because it still kind of gives me that childlike sense of wonder, which is very hard to obtain as an adult. And it's well designed, and just the platforming just still holds up. In all honesty, it really does, minus some of the camera issues and the frame rate stuff, which if you can,
And the ledge
and the
grabbing.
ledge
Every
grab,
once in a while, random
which,
ledges for some reason are like more slippery
and
or
not all
something. I don't
ledges,
know.
just a handful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I love this game, man. I'm kind of with you, Jiggy, where I wouldn't put it as great, but I'd give it a little bit higher. I'd probably give it like an 8, maybe eight and a
Sure.
half on like a good day type of thing. It's nowhere near Banjo Kazooie or Mario 64. I do actually kind of put it on par with Donkey Kong 64 because Donkey Kong 64 is more polished for damn sure,
Hmm.
but because it's such a heavy collectathon, it this feels a lot more streamlined. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot,
Oh
it
Yeah.
yeah,
feels a lot
yeah.
more
I can
focused
see
and
that.
guided versus Donkey Kong 64 is all over the place.
Hmm.
So yeah,
I love
I love this
exploring
game.
though, so
Yes, Donkey Kong 64 is great
every
for that.
yeah, every nook and cranny. Why not? Right? Yeah. No, it's
every
true.
nook and cranny, I
Yeah.
freaking love it.
So yeah, I love this game, man. I'm so
Yeah.
excited that I finally had a chance to talk about it. So thank you again for having me on for this.
No, of course, of course. And before we say bye and thanks once again, where can everybody find your amazing show that's going on for how many episodes now as of this recording? You're inching closer to 300.
As of this recording, it's 277. Still Loading Podcast can be found on everywhere good podcasts are given away for free. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all that good stuff. The episode that I was talking about, episode 277, is a big one. I'm actually going to be starting doing advertising push for it because it is the Final Fantasy Fantasy Draft 2023 edition. It's what happens when you take Final Fantasy and combine it with fantasy sports and mash them together. And do not worry, listeners, you don't have to know a damn thing about fantasy sports to enjoy this. It is basically like if you look at everything in Final Fantasy, and I invite 4 amazing guests on. And if you so say someone drafts Cloud to put in their Final Fantasy, no one else can have Cloud in their Final
Mhm.
Fantasy because he's taken off the board. Kind of like how fantasy sports work for whatever sport you're doing with
Drafts
it.
or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did this once before in 2022. I'm doing it. I'm bringing it back with 4 new guests, with new rules, with modified rules, I should say, with new player abilities, and all my listeners. I mean, the voting will probably be closed by the time this comes out, but just in case it isn't, I have a Google Doc, a Google form for everyone who listens to vote on who won the draft. There, because all the guests pitch their Final Fantasy back to you once everything's been picked. Then they're gonna take everything together and pitch it to you and see which one won the Final Fantasy Draft for 2023.
Nice.
So it's a lot of fun. I'm really happy with how the episode turned out. So I hope you all check that out, especially you Final Fantasy fans. So yeah, Still Loading Podcast. You can find all those places at Still Loading Pod on almost all social media, except for YouTube is at Still Loading Podcast. And yeah, I'm on Twitch, Twitter, because I refuse to call it the other letter.
Mhm.
Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, all that good stuff. So you can find me all there.
Amazing. All about the creativity, man. I love it. Gotta love the approach. And yeah, check it out, especially if you're a Final Fantasy fan. I have very little experience in Final Fantasy, but this is an awesome idea, so I'm hit and play for sure when that drops. So.
Well, thank you everyone once again for making it this far into this episode of Remember 64. Thank you for having our guests. We had Josh here from the Still Loading podcast. Make sure you check out his amazing work. Does a lot of really great coverage, good interviews as well from people in the industry and other fellow podcasters and gamers. Great episodes and great content there. So Still Loading on your podcast feed. Jiggy, thanks for being here once again as well. And thank you, listener, for sticking with us through this episode and playing a little bit of Toy Story as we go. As always, just wanted to mention and plug the Patreon page, patreon.com/remember64show. Some new stuff is being added to that, including the video version of these episodes as well. It will be up there early. Before any of the episodes drop, you'll have video and audio options. Also, if you check out our Spotify page, you can get the audio feed of all of the episodes early as well. You don't have to go to Patreon to get them. So that's a really cool added feature that we now have on our feed. So if you are a Spotify listener and user, you can get to Toy Story and GoldenEye and all these types of games that we've covered recently early on that direct feed, and you don't have to get it separately. So that's always pretty cool. As well, follow us on social media. Social media is a little bit all over the place these days, but most active probably on TikTok and Instagram, I would say, at Remember64Show, as well as a YouTube channel, Remember64 on there as well, where you have some gameplay, some mini reviews on games that we've covered, and again, when the videos and the episodes release, you also see the video version of these episodes as we go forward. That'll do it for this episode of Remember 64. We'll catch you next time on the podcast feed and online. Always feel free to reach out, remember64show@gmail.com if you have any comments, questions, concerns, any of that fun stuff. And you want to talk about the show going forward, you can also find us on Discord. Myself and Jiggy are on Discord. Jiggy Look Back has his own Discord channel, and we have some feeds and channels on there as well for Remember 64 if you are so inclined. Other than that, have fun gaming, everybody. We will see you soon.